themselves, the rivers are still protected, but it's the non-attached waterways. Thanks so much for being, and thank you, Rachel, for your call. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. That includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the people around you.
Hello.
Hello, Miss Tanya. It's Santita Jackson. How are you?
You've been listening to Tom Hartman. For audio and video archives, visit TomHartman.com.
So early. I fell asleep last night and woke up at 12 and I haven't been in bed since. No, that's crazy, but you know, it's the show. It's the show. It's the show.
Do you have an old car sitting around your house?
Ready to come on
Maybe you're
today
paying
if you still have
insurance on
time
it.
at 6:30
well,
or
if you
7.
don't need that car anymore, donate it, running or not, to
Well,
the
30
United
minutes
Breast
or an
Cancer
hour.
Foundation. They will even come and pick it up for free and give you a receipt for a tax
You
donation.
could be
Breast
on,
cancer screening could save the life of someone you love.
from
And right now,
6:30
they
to
need your
7,
help. They want to
or
save more
from-
lives through early detection by offering women free
okay.
or low-cost breast screening exams.
Oh,
And that's what your
bless
old
your
car
heart. Okay,
has to
I'm
pay
sorry.
for. So get your phone out and call right now to donate your car to the United Breast Cancer
fantastic.
Foundation.
And I'm going to have you on
Or they will
with-
come pick it up for free and give you
Oh,
a
I
tax
think it's,
donation receipt. Call right now
goodness gracious,
at
let me see. Who do I have here?
800-280-9435. 800
You're going to take the lead on this. Alderman William
That's
Hall.
800
But I want you to take the lead on it.
9435. 800
The two of you, just to, because he
9435.
was obviously he was
Driving
in
it
the-
home with Patty Vasquez.
A lot of the
And it was
right-wing
very
extremists
distressing to
just
him.
hate our very existence. And I shouldn't speak for all Democrats, all
watching
liberals.
it. But
I'm
okay,
sure there
well,
are
we
extremists
will.
that
I'm
are
gonna send
violent,
my
and
number to-
Republicans will be more than
send
happy
your
to show you those
number,
images over and over again. But we don't want to eliminate Republicans.
board.
We don't want to eliminate them. We want them to snap
Okay,
out of it
and your last name
denounce
is?
this kind of behavior.
Patty Vasquez.
Okay, and if you would just send me a text and let me know how you want to be introduced.
WCPT 820.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Out, but put a frog in cool water
Alrighty, bye-bye.
and slowly heat it up. That frog will boil. As veterans, we tell ourselves the lie that we can handle anything. We let the water boil. You are not a frog. If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach. Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
This is AP News. I'm Rita Foley.
Police are revealing more information about the 19-year-old suspect in custody after the tragic shooting at a high school graduation ceremony in Richmond, Virginia yesterday. 2 people were killed and 5 others wounded. They think the suspect knew at least one of the victims. Jason Alexander, a parent, was there and heard the gunshots.
We got down on the ground and it's just chaos from there. You just kept hearing shots. It was like 8, 9, 10 shots.
He talked to WWBT-TV in Richmond. A Florida woman accused of shooting her neighbor dead last week has now been arrested.
The Marion County Sheriff's Office says Susan Lawrick, a 58-year-old white woman from Ocala, Florida, has been arrested in the death of Ajika Owens, a 35-year-old black mother of 4. In a statement, Sheriff Billy Woods said Owens was shot through the front door Friday night, moments after going to Lawrick's apartment, and that witnesses say the suspect yelled at Owens' children and threw a pair of skates that hit one of them. Lawrick claims she acted in self-defense and that Owens had been trying to break down her door. Sheriff Woods says this was not a stand-your-ground case, but simply a killing, a sentiment shared by neighbors like Lauren Smith.
She was shot through a door. It's just...
Hi, Miss Jackson.
Yeah.
There's an issue with the phones where they're unable to hear me. I'm going to call my boss to see if there's some way I can fix this.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Outrageous to me.
There's an issue where the phones, they're not able to hear me through it, so I'm going to try and call someone and make that be fixed, but just letting you know what the situation is.
Scratchy. Smoke from Canada's wildfires has been moving into the U.S. since last month. The most recent fires near Quebec have been burning for at least several days. The effects can be felt as far away as New York City and New England. Former Vice President Mike Pence is promising America's best days are yet to come as he releases a video launching his campaign for the Republican nomination for president. This is AP News. Now to Ukraine.
Ukrainians in the Kherson region are making desperate escapes from floods after the dam collapse as shelling echoes overhead. As shelling from Russia's war on Ukraine continues, dozens of evacuees on an island in the Dnieper River scurry onto the tops of military trucks or into rafts to flee rising floodwaters caused by the dam breach upstream. The scrambled evacuation by boat and military truck from an island neighborhood off the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson testifies to the latest human chaos caused by Russia's war in Ukraine. Officials say waters are expected to rise further, but the rate is slowing. Ukrainian authorities accuse Russian forces of destroying the dam, while Russia blames recent Ukrainian military strikes. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
On Wall Street yesterday, the Dow gained 10 points yesterday. I'm Rita Foley, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Michael Carroll. For today, look for clearing skies with high temperatures working up into the mid to upper 70s. Lower winds out of the north and northeast 5 to 15. Then for tonight, mostly clear, a low of 54. Abundant sunshine then for your Thursday with mid-70s for high temperatures. And that stretch of sunny weather looks to continue even into your Friday as well, highs up to 80. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently 60 degrees.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
Just a little heads up before something bad happens.
Move your coffee cup away from your computer. Oh, no.
So you can have more control.
Stop. You're texting your boss by mistake.
Uh-oh. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today.
All right, got the phones working, and Pastor Vicki Johnson is here, and I'm going to pull up the Facebook as we speak.
Before, as you do that,
Don't wait. You have the power to change the outcome.
6:30 as opposed to 7. And she's only going to stay for 30 minutes.
That's do I have prediabetes?
Yes, saw that message. Perfect, will do.
Ad Council and prediabetes awareness partners.
And there'll be some other switches.
Hi, I'm Marcel Spears.
Okay, sounds good.
Full neighborhoods.
I'll keep an eye on my phone.
Okay.
One made
Thank
just
you.
a bit safer with the help of America's brave military dogs.
Okay, do we have
these dogs
the
who
pastor
often
up?
take the same risks and make the same.
Yes, you do.
Hi, how are you?
Keep our troops safe.
I am well. How are you?
I am doing
Locating
fine.
enemy
You know
positions
what?
and
I've got
bringing a
to
sense of
sing
comfort
at
and home to an almost unimaginable
Ramsey
circumstance.
Lewis's tribute.
Yet, when these brave K9 heroes retire,
And I need to
that is fantastic.
oh, bless your heart. And the weight in the water is
left
taken.
overseas. American
And
Humane
so,
wants to bring home these
I
valiant
wanted to
dogs
ask your advice.
and reunite them with the people who mean the most to
Song
them,
advice.
their
Okay?
handlers. So they can enjoy happy, healthy.
Can I get one more word from the pastor?
Oh, well, you should ask
To
her.
learn how you can help
Absolutely.
America's four-footed heroes, visit AmericanHumane.org.
Go on and ask her.
Victor, did you play for the first time to have
Pastor Johnson, can you speak so we can hear you?
Yes.
in the morning?
Sure. I'm just glad to be here.
You that
Excited about you forming
Victor
at Ramsey Lewis's memorial.
was doing
This is great.
was also been
Yeah,
caring for
Pastor, you
Victor.
read me the right act for
One of the
Christmas.
most important aspects for you is taking care of yourself. I just didn't forget that I also had goals and that I also had
You gotta use it. You got the gift. You gotta use it.
All right, cool. I can hear everyone loud and clear. I'm going to run to the other room real quick to check the time. I believe we have about 2 minutes, but I'll just let you know real quick.
Thank you.
We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Do you have an invention idea but don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp now for free information on how to get started today. InventHelp provides invention services that help everyday inventors get started with their idea.
Yep, we got exactly 2 minutes.
Representatives nationwide.
It's a little bit less than that, but yeah.
Process step by step. Over 10,000 patents have been secured through InventHealth's patent referral services. Our services include professional materials needed to showcase your invention, and 3D animation and prototype modeling
And I've
to
got to
help you
tell you about a
demonstrate your
conversation
idea.
that I had with someone
Get
else
down to the
yesterday.
details of your idea, what
It
the
just
technical
confirms that
drawing.
this is what I have to do right now.
The InventHealth
also.
data bank
But
includes
you know,
thousands of
Pastor,
companies
now I
who
know how to
agree to
use the
review new
gifts.
ideas.
I don't think I really
Since
understood
1984.
how to use them
Let's help
all
you next. Take
at the
advantage
same
of the
time
opportunity
before,
to get started
you know?
today.
Call 1-800-217-4380. That's 1-800-217-4380.
understand
Again,
myself much better.
1-800-217-4380.
This is Ron Woody.
1 minute.
Co-owner of Megan Financial, an independent retirement and financial services firm here in Chicago. We've built our business on playing the long game, teaching financial literacy to our clients to prepare them for a great future and a dignified retirement. Investments, pensions, 401ks, they're all pretty complicated. We make sure that you understand it all. Give us a call at 708-444-1090. We're Megan Financial, and we're your partner.
All right, stand by. Let's have a good show.
Or visit us at megent.com.
Securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors LLC, member of FINRA SIPC, a broker-dealer and a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. The views depicted in this broadcast are general in nature and provided for informational use only. The views are not necessarily those of Cetera Advisors LLC. They should not be considered as specific investment or tax advice. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Keep in mind that investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Investment decisions should be based upon an individual's own goal, time horizon, and tolerance for risk. Consult your investment and/or tax professional regarding your unique situation.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson feedback. Let's take care of that. And it's a joy to be with you today. Call me at 773-763-9278. We're going to be talking about a hot topic that people have been really, that's been consuming us in Los Angeles, in New York, in Chicago, wherever you see significant Black and Latino populations, you see tension where there should be unity. And we saw it last week when $51 million were allocated by the city of Chicago for our migrant workers. And so let's talk about that today. Let's talk about why this meeting was so contentious, why it got so ugly, why two groups that should be allied, in some instances, are at each other's throats. And let's see if we can understand one another. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and let me know what your thoughts are about the $51 million allocated for these migrant workers. And mind you, there are tensions within the Latino community because you have more than 12 million of them who are waiting to be processed as immigrants. They're not being fast-tracked either, but then they're not being fast-tracked to do farm work. Think about that, everybody. Of course, you know, that's Helga in the background. I love her, but I want you all to call me at 773-763-9278. I want to know what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763-WCPT and AM 950 Radio, the voice of Progressive Minnesota. Those are my two stations that I am broadcasting from. But I'm also on the Santita Jackson and Friends page over here on Facebook. And I'm on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please, everybody, Barbara and Joyce and Linda, please go over to the Santita Jackson, Eric, go over to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I need you to go there. That's what Facebook asked me to ask you to do. Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. And everybody, like and share this show with at least one person. Dave, Daryl, Shirley, that's right. Please like and share this show. And I hope that you'll come to the Rainbow Push International Conference. I've been promising you to get more hotel information, but there are two hotels that have been in contention. And I'm going to have that to you by the end of the week. How's that? July 15th through the 19th. You don't want to miss it. So let's get right to it, everybody. We've got a lot to talk about today, and I want to hear what your thoughts are about the migrants and the assistance that they are getting here in Chicago and all around the country. I told you President Biden said we need our farm workers. So is this yet another corporate decision like the one that we saw that brought Africans to America more than 400 years ago, almost 500 years? We've been here really since the Spaniards came here. They track us back to the 1530s. So I want to know what your thoughts are. I mean, call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Do you feel, as some do, that you've never helped African Americans? Every promise you've made to African Americans, you've reneged on. They've done that too. The power structure's done that to indigenous people as well. Now, what about the Latinos who say, hey, I've been waiting here patiently to be processed. You're not fast-tracking me, but you're fast-tracking them. Fast-tracking them so they can get on these farms and work for no money. There's that, too. So we need to talk about all of it, everybody. So let's get to these headlines. Former Vice President Mike Pence announced this morning he is running for president, setting up a battle for the Republican nomination with his former boss. So we've never seen this before. We've never seen a vice president, a former vice president, run against the person who selected him to be on the ticket. His launch video comes after he filed official paperwork earlier this week for his bid seeking the GOP presidential nomination. He's joining New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and others. It's a crowded field. Many people feel that the crowded field will help former President Trump. What do you think? Hazardous air, New York City on Tuesday. It's as far as Detroit, everybody, which means it could be creeping over to Chicago. Maybe that's why it's going to be partly cloudy today, everybody. New York City on Tuesday briefly topped the list of the world's worst air pollution as harmful smoke billowed across the Northeast from wildfires in Canada. The smoke that has engulfed the region is pushing south from more than 150 active fires, wow, that are burning in Quebec, in Canada, to our north, everybody. Air quality alerts have been in effect throughout the week for parts of several states, New York, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois. We're going to see, everybody, in Canada, an estimated 26,000 people remain displaced from their homes after being forced to evacuate because of these fires. A joyful high school graduation in Richmond, Virginia, turned to terror, turned ugly yesterday when a gunman opened fire outside the ceremony where hundreds of people were standing. At least 2 people were killed, including an 18-year-old student who had just graduated, everybody, according to police. Several others were injured as they tried to escape the gunfire, including a 9-year-old girl who was hit by a car, according to the city's interim police chief. Wow, everybody. More than 1,400 people have fled their homes after the collapse of southern Ukraine this week, everybody. And there's just news that goes on and on. Our prayers go out to Pope Francis, who is undergoing surgery today. He was hospitalized to undergo abdominal surgery, according to the Vatican press office, praying for his speedy recovery. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 69 degrees, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, 79 degrees, mostly cloudy. Maybe it's because of this, these wildfires. Wow, everybody. And tonight, the Heat versus the Nuggets, a series tied at 1. Who is going to become the NBA champions? We do not know. In the NHL, that series, it's also tied. Golden Knights versus the Panthers. They're off tonight, but tomorrow they'll be back on. We're going to see. No, actually, the Golden Knights lead 2-0 in that series. WNBA, the final overtime. The Sky 108, the Fever 103. Go Sky. And tonight, the Lynx will be facing off against the Liberty. In soccer, the Houston Dynamos 4, Chicago Fire 1. All right, everybody. And the Rays shut out the Twins yesterday, 7-0. The Angels 7-4 over the Cubs, but the White Sox were triumphant, 3-2 over the Yankees. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. I want to know what you think about what's happening with the migrant situation. It's hit Chicago. It's hit New York. It's hit Los Angeles. It has hit the border states. What do you make of all of this? Call me at 773-763 WCPT. Hey, Jerry Patton. Hey, Dave Dowling. Everybody, please go over to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and like and share the show. Everybody, like and share. Like and share. Joyce, like and share. Elena, please like and share. Like and share. Like and share. Robert, shalom to you. Like and share. Jewel, like and share. Come on, Jewel is my cop over there. Like and share around everybody up. Aurora, how you doing? Sending you much love today. Sending all of you much love. But we have got Pastor Vicki Johnson, yay, with us today. It's always a joy to have you. But you have not one, but two churches. You are holding two churches. My goodness. Where can we worship with you on Sunday? Well, you know, it's a blessing.
Yes, it is. So on Sundays, you can worship with me at 9 o'clock a.m. at Lebanon Lutheran Church, 13100 South Manistee in Hegewisch, and then at 11:30 a.m. at St. Thomas Lutheran Church on 80th and Jeffrey Boulevard, right in the South Shore area.
Yeah, 80th and Jeffrey. Who knew? I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, let me ask you, what is the good news today? It's such a confusing time. You know, but you can find joy. You can find some good news now. What is it?
Oh, yes. Well, good morning, Santita, and good morning to all of your morning stars and friends. There is good news. I grew up in Hyde Park on 54th and Kimbark here in Chicago. Each Saturday when I was a teenager, I would ride the 55th Street bus to the number 3 bus on what is now Martin Luther King Jr. Drive to the Met Theater to attend the weekly Saturday morning meetings of then Operation Breadbasket. If an older person got on the bus and needed a seat, I was raised to give up my seat. We were taught to have respect and honor for our elders. Upon entering the lobby of the theater, Reverend Jesse Ma Houston was there selling treats and newspapers to support her ministry. She was our prison minister who saw about the inmates at Cook County Jail, visiting them and encouraging them through their situations, even though she was of an advanced age. She was not donned in fine apparel with expensive jewelry or fancy hairstyles. She was plain and simple, but a great woman that we all thought highly of and loved. In today's society, that same respect and honor is waning, leaving some elders to feel useless and unnecessary. This is not so in some other countries where aging is viewed differently with honor and respect. Elders are the heads of households, and their wisdom is sought. I ran across an elder's blessing that I would like to share with you. Here it is. I honor you for the path you have walked and the perspective you share from your life's journey. Your contributions to the world add lasting value beyond measure. Your sage words enrich the lives of all who listen. I give thanks for your memories and the stories you share. You are a light of love in the world today. Your enthusiasm for life and the love you express inspire me to make a difference in the lives of others. Thank you for reminding me that I, too, always have something to give. So I give thanks for the generations before mine. 1 Timothy, the 5th chapter and the 17th verse says, let the elders who rule well be counted worthy of double honor. Today, let us honor the generations before us, not just on special days, but any day. Call someone, send them a card, listen to their stories, and be blessed. If you will do this, and I trust that you will, then to me, that's good news.
Amen to that. Thank you for that. I was thinking about Uncle St. Clair Booker, yesterday.
Yes.
Crunchy, but boy, oh boy. My brother Jesse, as he eulogized him, he said, he was tough when we were young and tender as we got older.
Yes.
And I miss him. There's some people I miss Reverend Evans. I miss Mrs. Evans. There's some people, Juanita Passmore. I miss them. I really,
definitely.
Miss them. But I thank God that I have all of these precious memories and so much that they gave us. And thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I just give them a kiss and blow them kisses and send them love as they are in eternity now. And I thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder today. We love you, Pastor Johnson. Where can we worship with you once again on Sunday?
On Sundays, you can worship with me at Lebanon Lutheran, 13100 South Manistee at 9 a.m. and at St. Thomas Lutheran at 80th and Jeffrey Boulevard at 11:30 a.m. for an hour of power. Both services can be viewed on Facebook.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Pastor Vicki Johnson, everybody. And, of course, let us make this pivot to Dr. Shanita Knight, an infection preventionist, registered nurse, college lecturer. She does it all. Now we've got, as if the viruses were not enough, now we've got an air quality emergency because of the fires in Quebec. Is there anything that anyone can do about that? I mean, the fires are so far away, and yet they're affecting our air quality. Yesterday, for a big chunk of the day, the worst air quality on earth was in New York City. New York City. What do we do about that? I mean, the air that we breathe that's really important. The quality of it. Dr. Knighton.
Good morning, Santita. So this is actually connected to so much of the environmental issues that we have going on right now. And while I could talk about the fire aspect of it, I want to talk about pollen briefly. So what happens is our plants, they need the carbon dioxide. And so what happens is, as we know, with, let's say, global warming or environmental changes and the greenhouse gases, what's happening is you're ending up with plants that are utilizing that carbon dioxide, and it's causing an increase in pollen. So when we're looking around and we're seeing much more pollen this season than what we've seen in the past, which has been a problem for people with COPD, asthma, allergies, that do not necessarily do well with pollen. You're starting to see an uptick of those cases because there is so much pollen that is in the air. I know we talk about it all the time when we say that things are changing environmentally, but it comes down to how I mentioned everything being so interconnected, and interconnected in a way that it even still relates to my field of infection prevention and control. Because naturally, if someone is having, let's say, symptoms as a result of being exposed to that pollen, these are individuals that might exhibit symptoms of, let's say, allergies, where they're having puffy eyes. They may have runny nose. They may have, symptoms that might exhibit a cold. And if they are already suffering in that manner, they're having to rub their eyes, they're having to sneeze, it doesn't mean that it exempts them from having some sort of other illness. These individuals then may be sneezing, may be coughing, and it could actually bring on some sort of respiratory illness as a result of having, let's say, asthma or having allergies, because those droplets are being exposed to environmental factors. They're being exposed to other people, and then it ends up sometimes turning into a full-blown cold or some sort of respiratory illness. So that's how it's related to infection prevention and control. So when I talk to people and I still ask them about, or they say, well, what can be done, I believe the bigger answer to the environmentalists in regards to us reducing our footprint that so many people are talking about today. But I want to say that from the infection prevention and control standpoint of it, is, are you still washing your hands? This is actually a time where individuals that know that they have allergies to it, or people still cutting, let's say, fresh grass, and they know that they're triggered by pollen. They may not necessarily be the best idea in order for them to do so. So even though people have been wearing masks for illnesses during the pandemic, it's not a bad idea to wear a mask outside when you are dealing with some sort of dander and you know that you have some sort of allergy to the dander, and it may end up triggering one of those reactions, let's say if you have allergies or asthma. So that would be a case, which we haven't talked about, Santita, for which masks would be appropriate. And even still then, you know, when we're talking about masks, some level of protection is better than none. So people may say, oh, well, do I need this kind of mask? Do I need that kind of mask? A cloth mask would do just fine with being able to just protect that pollen from coming in contact with your face. I know that your eyes, you see people that will be outside and they'll actually use goggles when they're interacting with the grass or cutting grass. These are still protective measures, and so we also have to start understanding how are we interacting with the environment and how is the environment related to infection prevention and control.
Because one thing leads to another. I mean, you know, if you post-nasal drip can add up. You know, just a lot of things that we don't really pay attention to. It's the little things that become big things, and the big things become big problems. Dr. Shanina Knighton, everybody, please go to Hey Dr. Nina, HEYDRNINA, HEYDRNINA, Hey Dr. Nina. She gives the best common sense advice. Oh my goodness, but it takes a lot of research, a lot to get that done. And we just love you, Dr. Knighton. Everybody, I want to talk with you about what happened in the city council here in Chicago last week, but it's been happening in Los Angeles. It's been happening in New York City and just wherever you see Black and Latinos who are scrambling for fewer and fewer resources. We're at each other's throats when we should be linking arms, I believe. So I want you to call me what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Okay. Oh, okay. This is Dr. Knighton. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Girl, I am doing well. I'm gonna actually plan to get away for a little bit this summer. You know, not like, oh my goodness, I got sick and I had to sit down, or I just got tired. No, I'm gonna get away and rest for a few days.
Oh, you sound like me. Man, I've been saying the same exact thing.
Oh, I'm gonna do it. I don't know where I'm gonna go. You know, there are a couple of birthday trips I'm supposed to take, which is great. A friend of mine told me, get your passport. I said, okay, we'll see about that.
And that is nice, but like I was saying, I need I need a mission trip. I probably need like one of those trips of just being, just by myself. And it's not that you don't love people, but you know how that is. Like sometimes where you need to regroup without like any interference.
Yeah, there's that. And I make no apologies. Right now, I know I need a little bit of space because I've got a lot going on. Kathy Hayes, how you doing? Great day from Northwestern Village. That's right.
Hi, Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
We have on Reverend Wilson, Dwight McKee, and Tanya Lozano.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm working on getting Reverend Dr. Hatch, but he's not answering, and his phone's going straight to voicemail. But I'll keep calling him.
Okay, no worries. I appreciate that. Let me say hello to Minister Tanya Lozano. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you? So honored to be here with you today.
It's a joy to be with you. And, of course, you've got Reverend Jeanette Wilson, Esquire. We love your family so much, Minister Lozano. We just love you.
We love your
she has
so much.
Santita, she has the fastest growing ministry in the city of Chicago. She let me come and speak for 5 minutes. But she has so many. It's the most diverse worship I've ever been to, and it's fully engaged. You have to stop by there. It's amazing.
Let me know what time is it and where is it?
Every Sunday at 11 a.m. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Yep, every Sunday at 11 a.m. at Healthy Hood Chicago. That's 2242 South Damon. We're there every single Sunday. And like Reverend Jeanette said, it is a very diverse crowd, very young people, creatives, mostly artists and musicians. And it's a good time. I would love for you to come
60 seconds.
out for yourself.
I will. That's my group, the artists and the musicians. And, of course, you've got to get Dwight McKee over there. You know, he's done so much work in the gospel space for the past 50 years. Brilliant, brilliant. Of course, he's with you right now. Well, to come right to you, but can you get Alderman Hall?
So, Tanya, I need you to call me this afternoon so I can talk about the convention.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a place for you.
30 seconds.
I wish I could sing, but you and Santita can hold it down for me.
All right now.
I wish I could sing, too. I can't sing at all.
Yeah, but you're surrounded by the musical people. Santita, they play all kinds of instruments. They have art. They have an expo, a mini
Stand by.
The church. It's just amazing. Amazing.
Well, you know, these are gifts from God. They should be on display. Dwight, how you doing?
Change the world. Change the world.
Stand by.
We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Just got your message. I'll grab him.
Love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about Black-Latino relations, everybody. According to this headline, Chicago City Council votes 34-13 to spend $51 million to help care for migrants after tensions between Black and Latino Chicagoans boil over at the meeting. Several people were there. We're going to have Alderman William Hall, Pastor William Hall, with us to talk about what he saw in this meeting. But I want to know what your feeling is. And I think the issues are much more complex than we even know. We don't even realize that there are tensions within the Latino community about this. There are tensions within the Black community. There are tensions everywhere except in the white community, where gentrification is pushing brown and Black people out of the city because we can't afford to live here. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. It's the same old thing, 773-763. WCPT, I want to know what your thoughts are. What do you think about the $51 million allocated to these people who are being moved around like they are toys? You know, I mean, these are human beings, Dwight McKee and Reverend Jeanette Wilson from Rainbow Push. But let me start with this young woman who has got the fastest growing ministry in the city of Chicago, and she's from one of our great pastoring families. Pastor Slim Coleman, her mother, Emma Lozano. Our families have been connected now for decades, and we're so excited to see this mother, this niece of the Latino activist so many of us keep him in our hearts today, Rudy Lozano. We are so proud of you as you have your ministry that you're establishing and growing, and you're the founder and director of the Healthy Hood Chicago. Talk to me. Tanya Lozano, the daughter of Emma, Miss Emma, First Lady Emma, who we love so much. And just by the way, my mother and father send you, your mother, and Pastor Slim Coleman all of our love today. What happened, and why did this meeting go all the way over that way when it should have gone straight down the street?
Well, I think we need to look at what's going on in this time right now. This is not a new strategy. The system that we live in, that we've all been brought up in, has a pattern to it. I think it's important to note that tomorrow will be the 40th anniversary of the assassination of my uncle Rudy Lozano, and the reason why it's important to note that is because he was assassinated shortly after he built the Black and Brown Coalition that helped get Mayor Harold Washington elected, right? A coalition of Chicagoans from every neighborhood, all walks of life, that upended the power structure that dominated city politics and created hope for Black and Brown residents long denied access to power. The reason why he was assassinated is because every time Black and Brown people come together to get any kind of power, the system will do its due diligence to try to break that up, because they know that that power is only going to continue to accumulate as long as we're working together. And we think about what's happening right now with the migrants. You know, there's talk about what kind of vocabulary we should be using for these migrants. Should we be calling them migrants or asylum seekers? Well, the truth is they are asylum seekers, but they're no different than a lot of the other migrants that have been here for decades that already have families and businesses. They've been raising families here with U.S. citizen American children. We think about what's going on, right? Specifically, we have 11 to 12 million undocumented people who have been living in the shadows in this country for decades, that have been promised some kind of immigration reform every time a campaign season rolls around, but then when people get elected into office, those promises are never followed through with. But now, with the stroke of a pen, Ukrainians, Venezuelans, and Cubans are able to get parole in place, which is a temporary protection. These people don't have to fear being deported. They're just arriving here. In addition to getting this $51 million, to getting a stipend every month, to, you know, people working hard to find them shelters. You know, meanwhile, there's homelessness that has been, you know, predominant in Chicago for quite some time in the Black community. And so I could understand, right, why the Black community and why other members of the immigrant community could feel upset about the way this is happening. But what I want to make sure that we keep in mind is that these are still human beings, these asylum seekers that are just getting here, and they're literally being used as political props, right? Venezuela, we think about what's happening in Venezuela, what's happening in Cuba, what's happening in Colombia. We have to be international thinkers. We have to be global thinkers. What's happening in those countries is that they're teaming up with other Latin American countries to move in the direction of socialism, so that they no longer have to be under the control of the United States government. But of course, the United States government is doing everything they can to stop the process towards socialism from happening. So what they're doing is they're putting ridiculous economic blockades and sanctions on these countries so that they cannot buy, sell, or trade with other people in the world, with other countries in the world, crippling their economies to the point where there is an unrest, right? People, almost to the point where in Cuba you can read documents where they say they want to strangle the economy so much so that the people will overthrow their own government so that the United States can continue to have control over those countries and their resources. And so those people actually, they're forced to migrate here a lot because of the conditions that we have created as the United States via our government. And so when we think about that, if they're considered asylum seekers, then so are the Haitians that were here, that were coming here, that were on the news just a month ago, and they were not treated the same, right? Mm-hmm. And the Mexicans that come here because of how the North American Free Trade Agreement has ruined their economy. They're forced to come here. And we should be treating all of these migrants as asylum seekers because that's who they truly are. The reason why we have to talk about Rudy Lozano and Harold Washington right now is because we're in a similar situation. We just won ourselves a new mayor, an amazing mayor, a progressive mayor, one that sounds like us, that looks like us, that feels like us. And we did that because we once again came together as Black and Brown. So it's not a surprise to me that they would use this issue of asylum seekers to act as a wedge between that unity. And we have to remember that this is not a zero-sum game. When the Black community receives relief, it doesn't take relief away from the brown community and vice versa. We should be fighting for everyone to receive the resources that they deserve together. And the only way we're going to get that is if we're fighting and demanding for those things together. We have to keep our unity. We have to understand that this is a strategy by a system that was created by white men with guns to protect their property a long time ago, long before we were even born. And that system does its job. It works like a machine. Anytime people come together for power, it will do what it can to break that up. we have to stop falling for the okie doke as black and brown, because we are literally family. We are literally related. If you go back enough in time to indigenous times, we are literally related. And we have to remember that we're a family. Immigrants are not only Mexicans. We have Haitians here. We have people from Africa. We have people from Asia. We have people from everywhere that are affected by these broken systems. And it's our job to come together and fight them together. And so, I would say we have to just think a little bit broader, because right now what's happening, right, is that Governor Greg Abbott is busting these asylum seekers from the South over here, and we think that's the extent of how they're being used as political pawns by the Republican Party. But it's a lot deeper than that, because if you look at what's happening internationally and global politics and how the United States government is playing a role in global politics, we have a lot of that responsibility on our hands as to why people are forcibly having to migrate to the United States. And so it's our job really just to educate our people right now so we don't fall for the okie doke, for the same strategy that has been used on us since in the 1980s and even before that. But Harold Washington and the assassination of Rudy Lozano just speaks to how dangerous the system and the machine feels when we come together, and how we need to be prepared to combat that.
Sounded like your mom, Minister Tanya Lozano. Where is your church, and
That's
how
what
can
I'm
we worship?
talking about.
Oh my gosh, where is your church, and how can we worship with you on Sundays? This is the fastest growing church in the city, everybody.
Our Sunday sessions are every single Sunday at 11 a.m. at Healthy Hood Chicago. That's 2242 South Basin.
And the service sounds like an experience that I had. Minister Lozano and Dwight McKee, Alderman Hall, William Hall joins us, and Reverend Jeanette Wilson. When we opened up Reverend Jackson's 88 campaign in the late fall of 87 in Greenfield, Iowa, we had a Mexican mariachi band, we had a white bluegrass band, and a black gospel choir. And everybody performed. We were in a big old barn with hay. We're sitting on, because it was Iowa, and we are opening our campaign. A couple of thousand people had crowded into this barn, though. And at the end, the gospel choir was going to close us out, Minister Lozano and Pastor Wilson. Oh, yeah. And they were, please, the Mexican mariachi band said, oh, please, no, we're going to get some of this. So then they started playing. And then the bluegrass band, they were like, oh, no. And it was a jam session. And it brought a lot of people to tears. We said, now this is America on its best day.
Yes.
Yes. How they came up with it, but that's what musicians do. We're like, we find the notes with each other. And I think we've got to do that. But I know that this meeting, which was so divisive and loud, and there was a lot of mean-spiritedness, and we have phone calls. We have phone callers who are calling in, and I promise you I'm going to get to you. But Alderman Will Hall, Pastor Will Hall, you obviously were there, and this was a meeting that was very disturbing to you. It was unsettling. Why? What happened?
Well, first of all, Santita, again, for you to allow me to come back to backs. Thank you so much yesterday and today.
Oh, wow.
It goes to show your
Get out of here. Let me put him on mute, Jeanette. Like, what is this?
Thank you
that's Will.
Yes.
But thank you for allowing me to come back to back 2 days in a row. And that goes to show your generosity and your passion to make sure that we are informed and inspired. So thank you. The onset of the meeting was very disturbing for me personally, because at the beginning of City Council, which is a tradition, we start with prayer. And, we had a Buddhist priest to come and to open up City Council. The prayer was very beautiful, but it almost didn't happen. In the onset, there was a lot of derogatory comments made. The Buddhist priest was cut off. She had to stop here and there just to essentially pray for unity and pray for peace and pray for understanding in the midst of the moment. And the moment was essentially a $51 million vote. And in the onset of it, Jesse Fuentes, alderperson, I believe in the 22nd Ward, she gave an excellent speech on the floor, speaking to the pain that was in the room. I think that what we witnessed was, number one, the frustrations of black people in the city, right? Like, we came together, $51 million to pay bills. This was not a vote to take any money away. It was to do what we ought to do as fiscal agents, which was to pay bills that was from a previous administration. That's something that has oftentimes been missed in this entire narrative. When our mayor was sworn in, along with my other 49 colleagues, we did not get a new budget. We were managing old budgets and old money that was left and mismanaged in the midst of a crisis. So it's not a matter of blaming, it's also a matter of explaining. And so that vote was to make sure that debt collectors did not stop servicing those who were in need in the midst of this crisis. What makes it a crisis is simply this. As indeed, it's already been spoken. We have always been a sanctuary city going back over 30 years ago. It was our dearly beloved Mayor Washington who said we will not allow federal agents to come in and, number one, intimidate, number two, steal information from those who are seeking city services that might not be documented, and or those who are seeking city employment. And so we thank God for our Mayor beloved who put a fork in the road and said, you will not. So the protection of those seeking asylum, the protection of those seeking a better chance has always been the heart of our city, and it was worn on the shoulder of Mayor Washington. Since his death, the investment as well as the infrastructure in serving those who are looking for a better chance and seeking asylum. Again, seeking asylum means that you're leaving a country because it's too dangerous. Your life is threatened. And having been to Juarez, Mexico, which is the entry point, one of them with our dearly beloved Congressman Jonathan Jackson, we did 2 trips to El Paso, and we literally rode across the border, walked to the bridge as well. So seeing it from that perspective with our congressman, again, it's dangerous. It is very dangerous. And I get it, to be very upset at the fact that we make accommodations in the midst of an emergency, which is the right thing to do, but not to accommodate the emergency of 56 people shot this past weekend, 12 killed. That's an emergency, right? To not accommodate the lack of access to health care. In my ward right now, there is no hospital that to cover 54,000 people. There's not even any clinic of good reputation connected to the big hospitals where people can walk in. In my ward that covers 54,000, that is an emergency, right? There are schools in my ward that are dilapidated with lead water. That is an emergency. So what we saw in City Council was, if we're going to address emergencies, let's address the emergencies that are present in our own city.
But hold on.
And so the back and forth...
No, stay right there, because it seems to me that we're making a false choice. 62% of the national budget goes to wars and militarism. It seems like our priorities are just all messed up, Pastor Hall, as you continue to tell us what happened.
Absolutely.
Because it's like, wait a minute, they can find $51 million to pay these bills, and they should. It's what we did in Washington just now. But the thing is, you don't want to, how we are closing hospitals all over the country, not just in Chicago. We're closing hospitals. Women are trying to find places to have babies. This is crazy.
Yeah, and in that moment, you could feel the same energy, and it was quoted, the same energy we have to find the subsidies, the support, and the resources. Let's keep that same energy up, and let's keep the same fiscal responsibility when a new budget is up to vote in less than 4 months. And that's what the argument was. It could have been, in my opinion, I get it, it was a lot of hurt, it was a lot of pain. This is decades of issues, right? Like, for example, this past weekend, I was downtown, had to run an errand, and I was blown away that Northwestern has a huge hospital already on Lakeshore Drive, one of the best in the country, and a walk-in facility literally 5 blocks away. So those who live in that ward, in that portion of Chicago, have a 5-star medical research hospital, as well as rehabilitation center, as well as just a general hospital, and a walk-in facility 4 blocks away. Whereas we have no mental clinics, but methadone clinics, right? So we've treated symptoms over the years. We've tried to put Band-Aids over the disinvestment that has now begun to show its face in the way in which our kids are behaving. There's no youth center in our ward. Right now, there's no place for kids to literally come play basketball, have an opportunity to learn music, do the arts. None of that is present. And that's what we saw a week ago in City Council, is the frustration and the anger of those who have said for years we've been asking for investment. And when our mayor is speaking to that point of investing in people, it looks essentially as simple as this. This is the 5th largest economy in the world, not in the country, but the world. So for us to have the 5th largest economy in the world and not to strategically make a commitment to a budget that says we invest in the mental, the emotional, and the physical well-being, the educational well-being of citizens in the city, while we are doing everything we can to accommodate more, is where the anger rests. But again, I say, the budget is a moral document. And in the next few months, we're getting ready to construct a budget for the entire city under the leadership of Mayor Johnson. And I do believe, in my heart to heart, we're going to see a different type of budget that shows a moral commitment to Chicagoans. But again, this is a matter of fiscal management. A lot of people don't understand that our taxes that we pay on our homes, 46% of all tax bills goes to pay debt. So again, this was a fiscal emergency management decision. We have to come back to the table now as a city council and begin to look at how will we sustain this 30-year-old system of hospitality, which we ought to be, that has yet to be funded as well as structured with the support of our federal partners. We must also look at the state. Our governor only gave $96 million for the whole state. $51 million was the cost just for the city of Chicago. So clearly, we have to look hard at the federal as well as our state partners to deal with an issue that is hitting our city that, again, has come from a political ploy from a governor. Now, I do get it. Having been to El Paso is very overpopulated and it's very dangerous. I've never seen this many people laying in streets. Literally, you cannot even drive down certain blocks because they look like what we would think as a block party, but that's where asylum seekers are laying, sleeping, everywhere throughout El Paso. So the distress...
But hold on. We have got more than 10 million vacant units of housing in the United States. Right. There's more than enough space to house people. And the schools they close, they're turning them into condominiums. Dwight McKee said that this is a land grab. Minister Lozano is going to have to leave us, and so I want to give the last 2 minutes to her. But Dwight McKee, your thoughts very quickly about what you've heard.
Well, first let me congratulate my friend Will on the victory. He's a great guy. Secondly, how soon we forget is that we people who were the benefactors and still glorify the Underground Railroad and Harry Tubman and the abolitionist commitment to put us in their little houses and sneak us up to Canada when we had no recourse. Had the abolitionists had the same attitude that we have toward these brown people, desolate brown people, then they'd have sold us back up the river, and we'd have been back where we started from. It's just such an arrogance and a contempt that we have when we have been really for years the benefactor of other people's graves. We have to take a more responsibility for why those people are leaving South America in the first place.
Yeah, that's tearing up their countries. That's what we're doing, these revolutions, because we're trying to take Venezuela's oil. I mean, come on.
The Monroe Doctrine we've given the United States, they gave themselves the right to exploit any South American country at their will. And since then, and with Alice Douglas and John Douglas and the CIA, they have overthrown every progressive economy down there that dominate and maintain the land. And with United Fruit
Company
and Chiquita Banana, they have set the economy up to be just a colonial state of the United States, and have exploited the people for 200 years.
Hold that thought. Minister Lozano, the last 2 minutes, the last 90 seconds belong to you. I know that you're leaving us, but your response.
Yeah, first and foremost, I appreciate everyone's comments. I think we all understand the issue a little bit more deeply than what the kind of education our public is getting, our community specifically. I'm on the subcommittee and the transition team for Brandon Johnson for immigration, and I can tell you that it's been difficult even in that space advocating for us to think more globally, to understand international politics, and to hold the federal government accountable for what their responsibility is to deal with this. We've only received, I think, $9 or $10 million from the federal government to deal with the migrant crisis. Meanwhile, the southern states are busing them over here, and we're responsible to take care of them. So, yes, $51 million was allocated via our city budget, but that should be something that we use as leverage to hold the federal government accountable so that we can get more resources to deal with this. Again, the last thing I want to say is it was discouraging to watch, council members from the black and brown communities argue with each other over this. We considered, these people are representations. These are educated people who were voted into those positions. We should not be perpetuating or, entertaining a narrative of division between black and brown right now. This is not a zero-sum game. And if this is any indication of what the mayor is going to do for the remainder of his tenure, is that he's putting the money where his mouth is. And this is just the beginning. Resources should start, the budget should start to look different. We should have a new budget soon where everyone is getting the resources that they deserve. But we got to stop playing into this black versus brown thing and stop looking like we're fighting over scraps. Because $51 million sounds like a lot to some of us who live in these poor communities. But when it comes to the actual budget, we know that that's really not that much, especially when it comes to the federal budget. We know that that's not that much. That's scraps. Like Santita said, we look at the budget where it's at. Millions and millions or billions of dollars going to military. Look at the budget in Chicago. How much did the police department get? Why are we upset about $51 million going to migrants? Meanwhile, the police department is getting hundreds of millions of dollars, and they prevent no crime. They don't even really solve crime that much.
We're paying half a $1 trillion, $500 million for bad behavior. I'm like, are you serious?
We're going to talk about where money shouldn't go. If we want to talk about where money shouldn't go and where we should be taking money from the budget from, we should be talking about those failed systems, not talking about whether or not we should be using money to take care of these people who are literally fleeing their countries because of our government, because of what our government is doing in global politics.
Let's stay right there.
I think it's just important for us not to continue that narrative.
Hey, I got to go to break. We'll be right back. I want you all to continue to call in. I promise you I'm going to get right to you on the Santita Jackson Show back in just a minute. Reverend Wilson, I am sorry I didn't get you.
Yes, ma'am.
No, just stay right there. Okay, but Minister Lozano...
You have my representatives, you have my alderman, and you have my pastor, Tanya. I'm good. They bring fire, baby.
Look, I love it.
And information.
I love it. I love it.
We are all descendants of the great teaching of the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. For real. These are the chickens down in our got to be getting the hatch, having set in those hallways, carry those book bags, set in those meetings that y'all made us sit in to grow us up. So this is y'all dream.
Well, no, so when you got in the room, you saw the game that was being run. And when you look and see that 62% of America's budget goes to militarism and wars, it doesn't even go to the people who fight the wars. There are payday loan centers on the edges of almost every major base in the United States because they cannot make it from payday to Monday. Are you serious?
Absolutely.
So, it's like we don't even have a real, there is no peace dividend. There is no peace. There is no peace. Maternal mortality in the United States for white women is the worst in the developed world. Hello. For white women. What are we doing here?
The money we spend on incarcerating people throughout America, as opposed to
Hi, Miss Jackson.
Yes.
children
We have Mark Fancher, CK, and Xavier ready to go.
become a slave for offenses that are not being corrected behind those bars.
Stand by. Hold
People
on.
are being tortured down
Wait,
in Dixon.
hold on. Do we still have Minister Lozano with us? Because I wanted to say a proper goodbye.
We do not, unfortunately.
Okay, I will call her myself. All right, you all. I'm going to have to move some of you all around. So when I have to say goodbye, because we have reduced lines, but certainly, Reverend Wilson, I want you to have your say before you go and invite people to the convention.
I can.
No.
Okay.
I need you at the top of this upcoming at 7 o'clock. I need you to make, because you're the one who got Minister Lozano to me, and I'm grateful for that. Because when I called her mother, she said, "You need to get my daughter," and all of our love and prayers go to Pastor Slim Coleman, because I didn't realize that he was struggling as much with his health.
We need to pray for the Brookins family. Mrs. Brookins made her transition yesterday.
Really?
And Howard I just found out Howard Brookins Sr. celebrated his 92nd birthday yesterday. So,
Okay,
a lot
well,
of challenges
say
with-
that at the top, please, okay? We'll dedicate the show to her. I didn't know that. I did not know that. Okay, stand by. Xavier Nagaris?
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler? Hola. Attorney C.K. Hoffler?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
And everybody.
And Attorney Mark Fancher?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We got a lot going on today. And, of course, Dwight McKee, Dr. D, is here with us today. But I'm going to have you open this up. If you just take about 3 minutes, Reverend Wilson, that would be great.
Okay.
And because I have to open up these, I have to let people call in.
I think the beauty of the moment was...
No, stay right there. Alderman, Will Hall, stay there, please. But you all keep talking because we're on Facebook Live, everybody. People love the crosstalk. But thank you for helping us to understand that we're paying that $51 million is to pay an old bill. Because people think that they got it was reparations. We just cut them a check.
Yep.
No, not at all. This was, and that's the thing about transitioning, even as myself. Like when I came into my office, I had to manage what was left from the previous Alderman.
Okay.
Expense account, personnel account. We did not get new budgets from day one. We got prorated leftover money that we had to figure out how to use for the remainder of this fiscal budget. So I'm not saying I'm the mayor. His pain is frustrating, but with our little budget for our neighborhood, I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul to tell Peter not about Paul.
But you know what? But you have to tell people how this works.
Absolutely, and that part.
People do that part because people don't know. I mean, when my brother ran for Congress, 30 years ago, he walked in and he had a bill from the Democratic National Committee and from the DCCC, and the person who was collecting the money was Rahm Emanuel, and he was quite forceful and nasty about it. And you owed them like $200,000 or $300,000 off the top that you had to raise, right, in addition to that you have to raise. And my brother Jesse, of course, said absolutely not. Now, of course, that did not endear him. He said, "No, y'all can go someplace where the devil lives. I am not going to do that now." So,
and our mayor has really been. I think a lot of. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think
1 minute.
We have alderman and a mayor that really looks at the total situation, and they appear to be a greater concern for the people that they were elected to represent, and how whatever decisions they make impact their ward, community, the city. And so this is a great opportunity for Chicago to right-size itself, because we've been left-sized for a long time.
Well, hold on, everybody. Stand by. Stand by. And just update me on the callers. Henry, please.
Will do.
Okay,
so right now we have Reverend Wilson, Alderman Hall, Dwight McGee, CK, Mark, and Xavier.
Okay, and Reverend Wilson is going to be leaving shortly, but let me know who's called in if we still have them. And thank you very much. All right, how much time do we have?
We have like 15 seconds.
Okay, stand by, everybody. We're coming up. Okay, I'm hearing something in the background. Everybody, make sure.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, Rainbow Push International Conference, July 15th through the 19th. Hope that you will be there. We'll be having discussions just like this one at this conference. $51 million. We saw, the headline said they were going to the migrants. It's not that simple. Alderman Will Hall from here in Chicago is telling us, no, you're actually paying old bills. So we got to talk about that, everybody, because many people are under the misimpression that this money is going directly to the migrants. They're going to get something that nobody else has gotten. No, but we're still making false choices. We spend money on the wrong things. We do. And so we have to deal with that. 62% of our national budget goes to wars and militarism, but we're not paying enlistees. Oh, no. And we have a revolving door from the top generals into the military-industrial complex. They're the ones who are getting the money. A fourth of that budget goes to military contractors who are overcharging us. There was a big 60 Minutes report. Thank you, Dwight McGee, for directing me there. I mean, this is a mess. So the people are getting, well, not rained on, but you know what I mean. And so we need to talk about that. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Keep calling, everybody. We're going to continue to cycle these calls through so that we can get you in. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Do you think that migrants are being given a pass? While you have more than 12 million immigrants who are waiting and asylum seekers who are looking to get in and become immigrants to this country. Well, they're not going to be farm workers now, are they? Look at all of that. Call me at 773-763-9278. Let's get some of these headlines out of the way. Former Vice President Mike Pence announced this morning he is running for president. He is joining New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, and many, many others. The field is growing and growing and growing. And yet, at the top of the heap, even ahead of Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is, you guessed it, Donald Trump, the former president of the United States. We will see how all of this shakes out. New York City on yesterday, briefly topped the list, everybody, of the world's worst air pollution, the worst air quality in the world as harmful smoke billowed across the Northeast from fires in Canada, everybody. In Virginia, a joyful high school graduation in Richmond, Virginia, turned to terror on Tuesday when a gunman opened fire outside the ceremony. Where hundreds of people were standing. At least 2 people were killed, including an 18-year-old student who had just graduated. And a 9-year-old girl was shot, everybody. Those are some of the headlines. In Chicago, a high of 69 degrees, mostly cloudy. Might be some of the smoke. The smoke has traveled to Detroit, everybody. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 79 degrees, mostly cloudy. In the NBA, the Heat will be facing off against the Nuggets tonight. That series is tied at 1. The Golden Knights will be... Well, and the Panthers, they have the night off, but they'll be playing tomorrow night. We can't wait to see what that's going to be. WNBA, the Sky 108, the Fever 103 was overtime, but that's all right, ladies. You took it home. Tonight, the Lynx will be facing off against the Liberty and the Houston Dynamo for the Chicago Fire 1. In Major League Baseball, the Rays 7, the Twins nothing. The Angels 7, the Cubs 4, but the White Sox brought it home 3-2 over the Yankees. Everybody, let's talk about what's happened with this money. What's happening with the money? I know we've had Alderman William Hall, and Pastor Will Hall, breaking it down for us. And we thank you for this brilliant analysis. We're going to ask you to do it again. But let me ask you, Reverend Jeanette Wilson, because you have been working with Minister Tanya Lozano, Emma Lozano, Pastor Slim Coleman. You've been working across all of these racial and ethnic lines. And of course, Minister Lozano's uncle, Rudy Lozano, who we all knew and loved, someone who worked so hard, not just to get Harold Washington elected, but to establish the brown and black coalition in this country. And he was assassinated as he was really turning a corner on that kind of organizing. And everybody's still trying to figure out what happened to him. So what do you make of this fight that we saw that was so ugly on the floor of the city council last week? Reverend Jeanette Wilson.
Well, I think there's a lack of real understanding and information about the amount of money that's being used, why the migrants, as we call them, are here. These are not rodents. These are not animals. These are not insects of any kind. These are people. These are children, many of whom were sent here, don't even know where they were sent. They didn't know where they were going. They didn't ask to come here. And what is happening, people, real people, humans are being used as some political and economic pawns. And so I think that we have a moral obligation to them as well as a moral obligation to those among us who are homeless. The Bible is very clear on how you welcome the stranger. What do we do? How do we show hospitality? So does that mean we do it at the expense of others among us who are the poor, struggling, unhoused? No. It means that we have to really sit down across cultural lines, across class lines, and decide that everybody deserves a right to live a healthy and productive life. And so I think that's what we have to push our aldermen and mayor to wrestle with, but they must invest in the people that are here as well as the people that have been sent here. However they got here, we owe them a sanctuary. And so these are some of the kind of issues that we're going to be discussing at the upcoming Rainbow Push Coalition Convention in July. It is important this year more than any ever. We're coming out of COVID. We're coming out of a crisis. We've closed schools all across the country. We've closed mental health institutions all across America. We have migrants being brought in, and most of us who got here, we didn't come as immigrants. If you're African American, you came as a migrant for cheap labor. That's why we got here. And now we're generations. We've lived here. We've become citizens and residents because we were born here. But we didn't start here that way. So we're going to be talking about that. We open up on Saturday with Reverend Jackson's 2 runs for president. And we're going to talk about what the impact of his campaigns meant. How do we get to a black president after his campaign? What did he do to make sure that we have more black elected officials in this country?
And a woman on the ticket. Hold on. A woman on the ticket?
A woman on the ticket.
Had it not been for Reverend Jackson, you would not have had a woman on the ticket because he didn't just break a color barrier, right? You wouldn't have had a Bernie Sanders.
But woman on the ticket, you remember we would have never had women in the Senate, the U.S. Senate.
No.
Reverend Jackson was the reason Feinstein, Barbara Box, and so many other women, Carol Moseley Brown from here, he never would have been in the Senate.
I don't want us to be reductive. I mean, because you had Asians who were able to win in California. I mean, Reverend said, when I win, you win. And that's what he meant. This was not just was a black man running, but he was running to make America what it's supposed to be, which is for everybody. But I've got 1 minute for you, Reverend Wilson. Absolutely.
And so I want you to join us July the 15th through the 19th. We're not even making the convention a high price. $35 is your registration fee. You can go to all of the sessions. You don't want to miss any of them. We open up at Push headquarters so you can see our children engaged in this new technology. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to honor our scholarship recipients. We're going to tell you who they are. We're going to talk about the international, the global impact of Rainbow Push and Reverend Jackson on Monday. We're going to talk about education. Then we're going to talk about business equity. And, of course, we're going to close it out with the International Women's Forum and luncheon. You don't want to miss any of it. I can't even tell all of it to you because Santita tells me I got to go. Well, I'm gone.
Yes.
You come.
Yes.
And we'll see.
Yes, people want to come in.
Register.
Thank you. Of course, one of those women who will be there, of course, is the chair of our board, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. That's right. Legal Q&A with C.K., but boy, we've got a lot going on today. Of course, you've got Alderman Will Hall. You know him. Of course, many of you know him as he was worked at Push for years and was really led the Saturday Morning Forum. And, of course, Xavier Nagaris, who gave his first sermon at Rainbow Push when he was a wee bit of a lad. And then Attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant author, essayist. And there's so much good stuff that he does, so much great stuff. And then, of course, Dwight McKee, a brilliant social scientist. And thank you so much, Reverend Jeanette Wilson, for being with us. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, we have quite a lineup here with us today. You know, Alderman Will Hall has been breaking down what happened. And I think it's important for that to be repeated. But we need to hear about this black-brown divide. You know, I mean, Xavier could not even, when he started campaigning for Reverend, he was 17. He wasn't able to vote yet. But I met him when he was but a boy, and he was on the road. This little brown boy was on the road trying to get people to get registered to vote. And, you know, just help us, CK, because, you know, let's get to it. We have a lot of ground to cover because that the meeting last week with the city council, it was very, very painful. And of course, Alderman Hall can help us to see, CK, what happened there.
Well, let's have. Well, I think it would be great. First of all, welcome to everybody, and thank you for being joining us today. But let's have Alderman Hall set the table for us and tell us what happened, because there's some legal ramifications. You know, nationally, this is happening. We've got states now like California saying that they're going to sue states like Florida for transporting these what they call illegal immigrants. I like to call them undocumented persons, but from sending them from one state to another. So we have states that are threatening to sue certain states for doing that. But I'd like the Alderman to set the table for us of what's happening there, because I think all eyes are on Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you, Santita. This is great. When I first got sworn in, the first document that I started to study prior to swearing in, let me go back to April the 4th, April the 5th. After winning our election, the first thing that I did was grab the 2023 budget. That book it's available to everyone, by the way. And I grabbed that book and I studied it. And the second thing I looked at was safety. It was alluded and it was mentioned earlier. We spent in the last 10 years close to $1 billion for bad behavior. That's one. And then secondly, we received an ample amount of money from our federal government for COVID relief issues, including taking care of those seeking asylum. So Chicago is not broke, it's just stingy. But we've seen the stinginess impact black and brown communities through a lack of investment in infrastructure. I want to say that very clearly. When we look at even Flint, for example, the Flint water crisis broke the hearts of so many in America, but in Chicago right now, there are over 300,000 homes where there's a lead water issue simply because of old infrastructure. So the list goes on and on of how mismanagement of money has been the problem that has shown up in black and brown communities. That's number one. Number two, having traveled to Juarez with Congressman Jonathan Jackson, we did 2 trips in which we met with our congressional leader who's in El Paso, to look at the entire asylum crisis going back to the Trump administration and now in the Biden administration. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. America's policies are problematic. Dr. King said it best. We will be humble to that of a third world country before it's all said and done for what we have done to other countries. And so on the border, having, again, went with Congressman Jackson, it is a humanitarian issue like none other. Just simply the needs for children. Reverend Jackson, I remember I walked into the office. This is all within the last 3 years. And I said, Rev, we need to help people at the border. He said, well, what are you going to do? And so he literally charged myself, Congressman Jackson, to go there and to investigate and build infrastructure. Yes, we did the humanitarian thing by bringing an 18-wheeler filled with resources. However, structurally, federal policies are at the forefront that's hurting municipal cities that are sanctuary cities. And so what we're dealing with here in Chicago on the ground level is the frustration and the anger of Chicagoans, especially black and browns, who are saying, hey, we can find a way to pay a bill And let's be clear, we are just paying bills left from a previous administration who did not do its best at fiscal management. And so though we hear headlines about, new construction, even those fiscal decisions were not managed responsibly. And they still hurt Black and Brown. So on day one, our mayor simply had to pay bills. And these bills were left from a previous administration that did not manage fiscally the responsibility to attend to asylum seekers, because we are a sanctuary city going back over 30 years ago when our dearly beloved said we will not invade the privacy nor strip the dignity of those seeking a better life. Yes, America's international policies, which is always at the forefront of the presidential race. How will we engage our international partners? Our international policies are problematic, they're demoralizing, and they're immoral. However, at the end of the day, we can blame shift all day. But in Chicago, right now, our mayor is challenging every argument. He's not dictating. He's asking for us to be innovative, for space for migrants. When we came to the 6th Ward and we examined, there is unfortunately no space. And that's due to going back to what I said previously, a lack of investment in infrastructure. The park was a tentative place that we looked at, Tooley Park, huge park, but the back orders of things that need to be fixed at the park would make it inhumane. And I know that people say, well, something is better than nothing for those who have somewhat of a heart, and then there are others, we don't want them in the neighborhood. Well, fact of the matter is, a lot of Chicago neighborhoods cannot house safely asylum seekers. And so the process in which asylum seekers are under is due in part to federal government policy, and then in the city is due to mismanagement. And so currently what we're doing right now is examining every budget line to develop a strategic fiscal management strategy that funds a 30-year initiative. This initiative was a 30-year-ago initiative that has not been funded correctly nor managed correctly because at the time it wasn't a crisis. We didn't see 35 years ago asylum seekers in police stations. We didn't see 35 years ago asylum seekers in neighborhoods just looking for room in the end. And so right now, our current mayor is literally expeditiously looking for the way to pay the bills that were left from a previous administration while evaluating space. And each neighborhood that he's asked, he has not dictated to us. He has not told us, you got to do this. That was, again, previous administration. He has asked, and we've looked and we've examined, and now we're dealing with the fact of decades of mismanagement of infrastructure as well. So we have an infrastructure issue that we're dealing with, meaning pipes, meaning water, meaning the basic needs of Chicagoans, plus, yes, asylum seekers, who are now stressing a system that has not been invested. Black and Brown at that meeting were frustrated with the fact that we put on our thinking caps to pay a bill, but we have not put on our thinking caps to pay and invest in human life that's here. And so the takeaway from the moment, we didn't, again, hurt people. It was a lot of hurt in the room, and a lot of things were expressed, unnecessarily and necessarily. But the biggest takeaway was budget season is coming. And the same passion and the same ideas that we have to pay for this bill, let us show an investment in this upcoming budget, which would be fair game for a mayor currently elected to now lead a budget that reflects his vision and the vision of over 3 million Chicagoans. And so that's what we're getting ready to see come budget season. Let's see the same passion and investment that we have to pay bills. Let's see that in making sure that Chicago is a fair city in which everyone gets their fair share. So that's what we're facing in Chicago.
CK, something needs to happen. At the end of 2012, 62,000 vacant units sat empty in Chicago. I mean, now that was 10 years ago, 11, but, people being pushed out of Chicago, Attorney Hoffler. They're not being pulled in.
Well, Santita, this is becoming a problem of epidemic proportions. Chicago is a microcosm of what's happening in other cities as well. But I'd love to hear Xavier's perspective on this, because I think what has happened is now we have communities being pitted against each other who are aligned with one another. And that's always unfortunate. And that's because of the false narrative that's being promulgated. So, the president of Boca Media Group, Xavier, do you have any comments on that?
No,
we'd like to hear your perspective.
2.5 minutes, Xavier.
Yeah, I do want to start off with, we keep on talking about this narrative of, first what happened in the city council meeting, right? Like that the African-American community and the Latino community were divided. That did not happen. Now, there were some loud voices that wanted to create division, but at the end of the day, 70% of the black caucus voted for the $51 million. In fact, one of the biggest voices and concerns about equity and what fair share of monies are coming into the black community, Jeanette Taylor, who made this impassioned speech, in the end, she ultimately voted yes. Let me quote Alderman Jesse Fuentes, of my friend Alderman Jesse Fuentes from Humboldt Park, new alternate from 26th Ward. Latina, she said, when we vote for $51 million, I expect the same city council to create alternatives to a carceral system that disproportionately incarcerates black people. This is what the majority of the Latino caucus was saying. They were saying we need this, but we also want to be cognizant that when we do this, that we need to continue to realize that this underfunding continues to happen in the black community. And I say all these things because at the end of the day, these 6 black aldermen that joined the mostly white council members, who were mostly the white conservative council members, were the 6 veteran black aldermen, right? When we talk about what happened with the Harold Washington Coalition, one thing we keep on forgetting is that a lot of the coalition that happened that was driving this were young people. Young people said, we need to get together. In fact, there were a lot of, conservative, older Latinos and a lot of older African Americans back then that were reluctant to see the coalition. It was a lot of young people that were driving this, and we see this happening again. And I think this is important because we keep on propagating the false narrative. The truth is, we actually saw a lot of unity, and if we keep on saying how divided we were, because there were a few people that were divided, then that's what people are going to see. That's not to say that people in the community feel this way, and they do. And like the alderman and other people are clarifying, there is a misunderstanding of resources. But what I did see and I did like to hear is that a lot of the new young Latinos that are in office now are also understanding and accept, understand the fact that why those tensions are there,
hold
and are saying, look,
hold that thought. Let's go to this break, hard break, but we'll be right back because I got to hear from Mark Fancher and Dwight McKee and Nick Xavier. You got to finish what you're saying because this is so important. Got to hear from Will Hall again. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show, legal Q&A with CK. Wow, back in just a minute. We want you to finish your thought, Xavier, but I'm curious about CK saying that there are legal ramifications for all of this. I'm sure you and Mark can speak to this. CK? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
No, but definitely. If you wanted to speak to this on the other side, you wanted to speak to it now.
Well, we can do crosstalk here. I want to talk on the other side, of course, but. Because but hold your thought. Write down notes as you get older. Xavier. We forget things, and we want you to finish your thoughts on the other side because we still have to hear from Dwight and we haven't heard from Mark Fancher at all yet.
Absolutely, and we definitely want. So the legal ramifications are exactly what we're seeing now in California and some states that are threatening to sue states like Texas and Florida for sending undocumented persons to their states, and they believe that they are unjustifiably taking resources or sucking up resources from those states' budgets. That is becoming a very, very litigious issue right now. That's where we are. So what's happening in Chicago is different, and it doesn't matter if they're sanctuary cities or not. The thought is that you have, and this is all part of what's happening as people are gearing up for the presidential election, because it's becoming a political issue. You've got Governor DeSantis, who is every day taking measures. I was in Florida recently and talking to someone she was my Uber driver, and I was talking to her, and she was from Puerto Rico, and she actually was more conservative in her views of sending undocumented persons back or shipping them from Florida than DeSantis was. That was shocking to me, because she took the position, look, I'm working every day. There are people that are coming in here. We're providing housing for them. We're providing job opportunities for them.
2 minutes.
And they don't have to have their documentation and all this kind of stuff, and it's not fair to the rest of us who are working every day. That shocked me, because I didn't anticipate that kind of a perspective coming from someone who's living in that community, living in Tampa. So, and who, from black and brown people living in that community. But that is the reality. In Atlanta, there's a discussion oftentimes, Santita, on my radio show in Atlanta when we discuss legal issues and we bring on immigration lawyers to talk about some of the legal issues. There are always conversations and people who call in who really voice some of the concerns very vehemently about how our communities are not being taken care of, and yet we're providing funds and services for people who are undocumented. That is very unfortunate.
1 minute.
And I think that's a narrative that's being pushed, and we need to talk about it, because we need to talk about what is actually happening and who is pushing that narrative, that false narrative. So the legal ramifications, they're very significant. You're going to have litigation. The litigation has already begun against those states that are transporting undocumented persons to other states, because some of the other states feel that they are still at the capacity and don't have the ability to absorb more undocumented citizens or undocumented persons. That's the legal angle, and that's what's happening. Not to mention, there are organizations that are filing lawsuits, that have been filing lawsuits for a long time against some of the immigration policies, because they feel that they're unfair and they're unfairly targeting certain groups of immigrants and undocumented persons.
Stand by. Back in 15 seconds.
Okay, we're coming in 10 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, CK, Xavier's got to finish, and then you've got Attorney Mark Fancher, who I know has got a lot to say.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to pitch it back. I'm going to pitch it to him now.
Can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Wednesday, so it's Legal Q&A with CK. We're talking about migrants in Chicago, in New York, in Los Angeles, in Texas, all over. And Xavier Nagaris really kind of helped get us straight, CK, on the divisions that, that the corporate media are pushing out there. He's like, wait a minute, on the ground, in the city council, you see more unity. And I'd love to hear from him, and of course, Mark Fancher, and then of course, we've got an alderman with us, Alderman Will Hall. He can tell us what he's seeing. CK.
Absolutely. So Xavier was making a point before the break, and we'd like him to finish his thought. Alderman?
Sure, yeah. Before the break, I was speaking about how 70% of the Black Caucus actually voted for this, how members of the Latino Caucus were cognizant, and we're talking about if we're going to pass this, we have to make sure that we continue to look at the underfunding that's going on with our black youth and the carceral system that's been created that's disproportionately black. And I do want to, and when elections matter, I don't know if this passes if we did not have the makeup of the city council we have now. I just want to end with that, because This is why election matters. In Los Angeles, you know, we had these horrible comments that were made by the 3 Latino aldermen, but what happened afterwards? What happened afterwards, we had massive rallies from the Latino community asking for these guys to be expelled, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, you had that reaction from the Latino community. So wait, no. We're not going to be divided here because we understand that's not going to benefit either of our community. Again, that's not to say that the communities themselves, like we're saying, have these perceptions, and some of them are based on a lot of the realities, but the hope that I see is a lot of this young leadership is saying, we can do both. We can walk and chew gum. And at the end of the day, that is what's going to bring people together, that we don't have, this isn't an either or, that this is that as communities get united, we're going to do both.
Absolutely. I mean, we're poised to do both. There's no legal reason or any other reason why we can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. So, Alderman, thank you for that. Now, Mark Fancher, an extraordinary civil rights lawyer who analyzes all these issues, constitutional issues, who's a celebrated author. What do you think about this? And this is a huge issue, a lot of discussion in the Black community, a lot of discussion in the Latino community about this, and a lot of discussion in the country. But what is your perspective on this issue?
Well, I think that Brother Nagaris is right on point in terms of his observations. You know, in the African world, we have suffered. We have been the subject of oppression when we have lacked a global view, when we've suffered from a deficit of information. In Africa itself, there were many occasions when those who came from Europe, who were attempting to capture and enslave Africans there, were successful in doing it by creating false narratives, by promoting tensions, instigating conflict between neighboring communities when that conflict really didn't exist, pitting people against each other so that they would go to war against each other, and when they would capture prisoners, would be more than happy to unload those prisoners on these white people who came from afar, letting them take them, without any knowledge or information as to what was to become of these people that they had captured. And it extends even into the diaspora, and particularly on the plantations. You know, the United States right now is in many ways one big plantation for people of color. On the plantations in the South, very often because of a very local, very limited, very narrow of a perspective on the circumstances of those who were enslaved, there were individuals who would fight, and they would scrap, they would do whatever they had to do in order to improve their personal positions and their personal conditions on the plantation. So if the master threw out the entrails from a pig, you know, even though we're talking about, you know, chitlins that, you know, really wouldn't cost very much, which the master regarded as garbage, people would fight over that. People would fight over opportunities to work in the big house so that they might have a better chance, a better opportunity to improve their personal conditions. We should know at this point that we should not go for that game, that we should not be scrapping and fighting over little local things. When we understand that there are global implications for all of these kinds of things that happen locally. When we talk about those people who come across the border, we have to understand that these people have been the targets and the subjects of oppression that was committed, that was caused by, promoted by, maintained by oppressive forces that have also been responsible for the oppression of African people in the United States. You know, the United States and its multinational corporations and its fruit companies and others dominated the areas below the border for decades by establishing state capitalism. They would have corporations to go in and to convert the entire economy to the purpose of exporting the resources within those countries, and they would dominate those countries through dictators that they propped up and that they supported, and through the use of small elite families that would dominate and grind into the ground the people who live there, underdeveloping these regions to the point where they have never really fully recovered in those countries. The economies have never been independent and self-sustaining. And when they make the efforts to become independent and self-sustaining, then the U.S. comes in and creates all kinds of problems for them, destabilizes the governments of those who are trying to establish some type of a fair, equitable, and democratic process for those countries. Look at what they've done in Venezuela. Look at what they've done in Nicaragua. Look at what they've done in Cuba after the revolution. So we understand that these people who are still living under the thumb of Yankee imperialism, when they're trying to escape that, the oppression that they find by coming into what many regard as a haven or a sanctuary or a safety, then we have to remember a couple of things. One, a lot of these people are coming into territory that the United States stole. They're not invading our country. They're coming into their country that was stolen from them, and so we have to start there. But we also have to realize and understand that the people who have caused the pain that they're trying to escape are the same forces that cause the pain of black people in this country. And if we're smart, we won't scrap over these little small amounts of money that are at stake in local budgets. That makes no sense. What we would do is we would join forces with them. We would strategize as to how to take these forces out. We need to eliminate them once and for all, and establish a world that is dominated by real people, people who have been oppressed historically and who have a right, a God-given right, to live decent lives, to live in dignity, and to live in peace with each other. And until we have that type of a global mindset, we will fall victim in the same way that our predecessors and our ancestors did to the games of those who have a global perspective, who come in and dominate those who have a very local, narrow perspective.
CK?
Wow. Well, you know, we've got Dwight McKee. I know our time is closing in on us, but we have to hear from
Daddy
Dwight,
D.
Daddy Dwight, Daddy D, Uncle D, who's an incredible visionary and who brings so much perspective to this. I heard him talking about these issues earlier. Dwight, what do you say about where we are today, and what should we be looking at? What would be the solutions? You know, Terry.
Well, I think Mark hit it out the park. We're looking at the symptoms rather than the cause. One of the reasons we're so sympathetic to the guys from Ukraine is because we believe that Russia decimated the country, and it's not their fault. They're fleeing from somebody's imposition of their will on them. One of the reasons we're so sympathetic to the Jews when they came here is we believe that the Nazis violated them and ran them out of the country. But we refuse to take ownership of our impact, our foreign policy impact on South America and the Caribbean, is that we did to them what Russia is doing to the Ukraine. And so we see somehow we blame these victims, these brown victims, for policies that we put in play that have forced them to make the hard decisions that they end up making. You know, that's why I started out with the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine gave the United States, the white people, the right to exploit people by law. And the Emancipation Proclamation didn't apply, didn't go past the southern states. And so these people were as exploited and enslaved as we were, without the benefits of even being able to reach out to American citizenship. And when they tried to establish their own independent countries, the CIA went down and overthrew every government that tried to nationalize and tried to create a base economy for the average person, and killed hundreds of thousands of people who protested against American imperial domination. And so until we change the policies of our government, which create the madness and the chaos, we will always be dealing with the symptoms. We'll always be dealing with people who are running away from oppression that fundamentally we create. And when I say we create, I mean we create because we imposed in the hemisphere that only America has the right to exploit any other country that was in the hemisphere that they decided to do that by laws, the Monroe Doctrine. So I'm totally in sync with Mark. I think he summed it up brilliantly. We have to, if we're going to be honest, make ourselves as accountable for what's happening down there as we try to make Russia accountable for the Ukraine, as we try to make the Nazis accountable for what happened in Germany. It's us creating this chaos.
Well, CK, you know, I if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Alderman Will Hall. You know, Xavier Nogueira sure did get us straight. He said, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the Black and Brown Coalition held. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we also need to consider as alderpersons is that, you know, when we look at what Alderman David Moore said on the floor, is that he represents his ward, right? He represents the voices of those who voted for him. And there are those that we must we must hear their voice, that are Chicago taxpaying citizens that have held homes, that has held their homes for 30, 40 years, and they're struggling on fixed income. And so some of the voices that you hear through all the persons, or you heard rather 7 days ago, you will continue to hear, because we're not going anywhere as it pertains to our hospitality as a sanctuary city, as well as our fiscal management, which we will be getting better at with the support, hopefully, of the federal government. And I want to pause and say that where is President Biden in this, right? Like President Biden, we need help. We need executive orders and funding to deal with specifically sanctuary cities who are footing the bill. It's only so much money that a city municipality can come up with without having the help from federal, state partners. But back to Chicago, a lot of Chicagoans over a certain era of time have accumulated a level of anger and frustration with their alderpersons as well as the city. And so there are those in different communities that do not want to see, which is their voice. That's their prerogative. That's their right. But we must always consider this, especially from the faith community. Jesus was an asylum seeker. He was running from a government trying to kill him, in addition to policies that were oppressive to the workforce of his own people. Moses was an asylum seeker. So asylum seeking is essentially looking for better life as a result of bad government. It's not nothing new to humanity. And so the humanitarian crisis that we are facing is not new. But what we must do is not only critique the policies, but change the policies. And this is why it's very important that we engage at a federal level, a county level, a state level, and a city level, because we need people in seats of government that can essentially critique, change, as well as invest. And right now we're witnessing and listening to the critiques of bad American foreign policy. We're listening to the critiques of bad municipal policies. But in order to change it, we must, again, look hard at where is the funding to put our money where our mouths have been for the last 40, 50 years to say that we're a sanctuary city. If we're a sanctuary city, we cannot just invest in those who are in need, but we must invest in the policy that we're paying for. We're paying for bad international policy right now. We're paying for the sins of those who sat in seats of power that saw land as a priority and military as a priority and not human beings. And so this is America's irresponsibility that's being blame shifted all the way down to a black man in the city of Chicago trying to lead a city of over 2 million people with a budget that's already been mismanaged and strained. So we must begin to hold accountable those who sit in seats of power over the policies. And I get it. There are those who do not want to see an investment in bad policy. That's what we heard last Wednesday. Let's stop investing in bad policy, and let's develop policies that also reflect a greater Chicago, a stronger nation. And that's where we are at the roadblock. We continue to keep people in seats of power that promote and vote for bad policy that us as taxpayers, 9 to 5, middle-class, working-class people are paying for. And so that's what we must critique, and that's what we must change, and that's what we need to continue to stay focused. Let's not get distracted. Let's not get distracted in pitting each other against each other, because in the words of your father, Santita, Reverend Jackson, if Chicago is on fire with a bad investment in migrant humanitarian support, it's only a matter of time before it blows over to Detroit. It's only a matter of time before it blows over to other cities. And so we must ask ourselves a question: will we stand 10 toes down as a city, as a nation, and say, hey, let's fight for policies in which everyone is a winner? Because right now we're losing, and who's losing are black and brown, poor people who are already living in a dilapidated infrastructure that's rooted in, again, bad policy and bad fiscal management.
I mean, how do you change the narrative, Xavier? I mean, you are, one of the top people of color. You have one of the top agencies, media groups from people of color. I mean, how do we change this narrative? Because the corporate media is telling us blacks and browns, they hate each other, they're having a fight, and you're like, that's not exactly true. How do we change this narrative?
I think part of it is happening already, and I see a lot of hope, and I think what's interesting is the Chicago City Council is really going to wind up being a model for the country when we talk about these things, and part of that is because of the new leadership and their willingness to accept the reality and have a real conversation about it, and I think that's what it is. I think it's, at the end of the day, we talk about organizing 101, right? Chicago is the birthplace of really of the new school of organizing, and we always talk about self-interest, right? Like in order to build power, we have to know each other's self-interest. That's where it begins, right? And self-interests are based on values, and if we cannot act upon each other's self-interest, then we don't have a relationship. And we build power by having lots of different relationships. That's how we build power, people power at least. And so what we're seeing now is the willingness to work on each other's self-interest, right? Again, I go back to the comment that Alderman Jesse Fuentes said, like, if we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. And I think we're going to see communities. We have this real serious issue going on right now with the migrant community, but we have this other real serious issue playing out and continuing to play out when we talk about the black community, when we talk about black youth, when we talk about violence, whether it's violence that's really happening or just the dumping of Chicago's issues and blaming it on young black youth, which we saw last year. I think that when we see leadership serving as an example, because folks need to see this. This isn't just going to happen organically overnight. Folks are not just going to get together and say we're going to work together. It's going to be folks seeing our leadership doing it. If our leadership aren't doing it, why do we think the community is going to do it on their own? It's not going to happen, right? So I see a lot of hope in our young leadership creating this narrative, and they're doing it. And I think the more we have real conversations about how we can help each other out and how we can support each other's community, I think that's going to be the start. And I think with Mayor Johnson and the new city council, I think they're going to serve an example. And ironically, I actually think they're going to serve. We're going to start seeing this. There's a lot of new leadership. Don't forget in the state Senate, in the House, and we're going to start seeing this. And I hope. I mean, we have a lot of established leadership who've been doing a great job also. But I really think this new leadership is going to force folks to say, you know what, this is how we have to do things. And I think that's how it's going to happen. And serving each other's interests is also going to be a great model for folks to come together to flex power, right? Because, for example, when communities of color get together, you're going to have the votes. Well, the Latino community didn't have enough votes on their own to pass what we needed for these poor immigrants that are coming to the city. We couldn't have done it on our own. And the black community, a lot of the issues that are going on in the black community, there's not enough votes for the black community to do it on their own. They're going to need Latino votes, right? So folks are going to see, when they come together, they're going to be able to push this. Because at the end of the day, a lot of this is policy. And it's going to take votes. And I think that example that the young leadership is doing.
Well, you know what? Stay right here. Stay right here because I want to get closing thoughts from you, Mark, and you, Dwight McKee, and you, Alderman Will Hall, and you, of course, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, because you've got a hard out because, the show's in syndication, so we've been running all over these breaks, and I've been hearing from them about this. But everybody, the Black and Brown Coalition did hold, but there's something happening on the ground, and so we have to do better communication and demonstration on the ground, because that's not the message that's out here. Because when you turn on talk radio, you hear something else. So we've got to move things around because we can only win together. When I win, you win. When I lose, you lose. It is that simple. We are inextricably tied to one another. God promised us all a seat at the table in the presence of your enemy. And remember, your enemy is God's child too. So let's work it out, everybody. I love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel so you can hear from this brilliant panel as they wrap things up for us today. What time are you going to be on Court TV, CK?
I'm on Court TV tomorrow. Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock.
Okay, Eastern time. Stand by, everybody. Closing thoughts. I love you. I want to get some closing thoughts from everyone. CK?
Yes, Santita. Well, first of all, this is a great conversation. I hope and wish that there were that we could have this conversation on a broad scale, national level, where there's town hall meetings that discuss this, because I think there's so much misinformation, misguided discussion. And again, when communities are being divided that routinely and that historically have been aligned with one another and can help one another, it's a travesty. So it is great to have this discussion. I hope that these voices who spoke today can be heard nationally and regularly, Santita. And I think we should keep talking about this issue on this show. And I'm going to talk about it on my show in DC too, because it is just that important. And this is one of the hottest issues from my standpoint that is plaguing our country right now. This is a plague. And so we can turn it around.
I hope so. I hope we'll be discussing this at the Rainbow Push Convention because that's the best place to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And find solutions that we can absolutely, positively implement. Because sometimes we talk about these issues, but when it comes to the solutions, people talk and there are no solutions that are implemented, that are executed. So the one thing that's great about Rainbow Push, Reverend Jackson's vision, and those who stand on his shoulders, is the implementation of solutions, execution of solutions. And that's where I think we need to be. Because what happened in Chicago, it pained people to see that. It pained me to read that. And I'm sure that for those of you in Chicago, it pains you to hear it, to see it on TV, to know that it was happening. And it's unfortunate that it's happening throughout the country. So this is a national issue. I would dare say it's a global problem. And our hands are not clean in this global problem. And I said our hands, the United States, our hands with our foreign policy are not clean. So we have to take responsibility, but it has to filter down to on a state, local, federal level. And that's where we, the people, can make a difference and execute solutions.
Well, let me get some closing thoughts. Mark Fancher, before you go, what do you think? I mean, you see from Xavier's research that the Black-Brown coalition did hold. But when you hear talk radio and when you hear the water cooler talk, you're not hearing that at all.
Yes, and I think that what we're going to have to do is to take a lesson from what happened in the aftermath of the movements in the 1960s. After the revelations of the FBI's meddling in the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, and other movements in the 1960s, the dirty tricks and the crimes that they engaged in to create dissension and division within organizations and within movements through various means. Ultimately, many activists in particular, and to some extent the broader community, recognized that these kinds of dirty tricks were being played whenever people began to speak up and to rebel. And when strange things happened, when they began to receive messages from people that didn't seem quite consistent with who this person might be or what they might say, when they began to get strange phone calls or whatever, the practice began of checking in with the person that supposedly sent the message or made these statements to find out, did you really do this? And that has in many ways frustrated many of the efforts that have been made by the federal government to create disruption and confusion because of a heightened level of awareness of the willingness of the FBI, the CIA, and others to create this kind of confusion and division. The media does the same thing. And I think to the extent that we begin to hear these kinds of disturbing things about our communities, that we need to take the same approach. We need to be suspicious of everything that's reported in the mainstream media. We can't just accept it as fact or as truth. We have to begin with the presumption that it's probably a lie, it's probably a distortion, and we need to go to the original sources rather than just relying on what the New York Times says or what CNN says or any of these news organizations. Go directly to the people who are speaking. Go directly to the people who are being reported on and find out what they have to say. And I think that if we establish that as a routine practice, if that becomes the culture of oppressed communities in this country, then we'll be able to prevent these types of false narratives in the same way that we've been able in many ways to frustrate the efforts to undermine and to create division among movements by meddling federal or agencies.
Wow. I think you're absolutely right. Xavier, your thoughts?
Yeah, I love the...
That was a great movement
the
lesson. That was a great movement lesson.
I love the concept of checking in. And I think not only checking in, but checking in on what the media is saying. I think after what happened in the city council meeting, like it's being said here, why I think some folks should have refuted what the media was saying. Like they basically built this whole narrative, and people believed it. And I think, and obviously we're correcting it through the show, but I think folks need to go back and say, wait a second, that's not really what happened here. So I don't know who does that, but I definitely think there needs to be a mechanism of checking the media, because it's not helpful. It's you're putting more wood to the fire of these false narratives when we could be saying, hey, look, we actually showed what could be done. We worked together. And again, the community's watching this. And if they're hearing something else, then they're going to keep on running with it. And so it is important not only to check, like I love the concept of to check in, but also to check the media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alderman Will Hall, what do you want us to do? We're so proud of you and the work that you're doing. so proud of you and the work that you're doing and the analysis that you're bringing to us. I'm glad that you were able to make time today because I know that you're very busy. And I do not call you all the time because I know that you're not Will upstairs in the office. I know that you are not Pastor Will. I know you have a whole different set of responsibilities. I try to be sensitive to you, to Congressman Jackson. You'll always be my Will, but you are now Alderman Hall. And so there are other responsibilities that you have. So there are other radio shows I want you to, and TV shows, and constituents, and. So, but thank you for making the time today. As I reached out to Nicole and said, "Girl, would you get him, please?"
One thing I learned from your father in serving and working with him is that you answer the phone for certain people. There's a lot of calls and a lot of emails, but when there's certain signals that come through that phone, and whenever I see you need to, and the last name is Jackson, I'm for it. Everything stops because you all have done it for me.
It's because we want to serve.
But you've done, and you've done it for me. You pushed me, and you personally. I'm not talking about your brothers and your father. You personally have pushed. So it's an honor, and I don't care how many times you want me on. I'm coming. God willing, and the creek don't rise. But in conclusion, I think that moments as such as this is for the days to come. Again, in city government, we represent people from different cosmos of Chicago. And what we must always remember is that as we're representing our neighborhoods, we're also representing our people, our history. And historically, what we're witnessing now is essentially the voices are tired. People are frustrated. And it was already spoken, and I'll say it again. I turned around in my chair, and I looked at Alderwoman Jessie Fuentes. I said, "You said it right." And what we're witnessing is the pain beginning to manifest in ways in which we cannot control. Going back to the riots, that was pain that was uncontrollable. And what is controllable, though, is the vision and the hearts of those who have a heart for people. And you cannot contain that passion as colleagues and all the persons, same energy. So when we come down and we sit down at that table to write a new budget for the city of Chicago and to vote for it, same energy. And so hopefully this is the birth of parity and equity, meaning that what happens to my brothers and sisters, it happens to me, regardless of where we start in our journey, because we must always remember, nobody asked for this life. None of those children that are fighting with their parents to get across borders, stepping over bodies, walking through streams, being used by drug smugglers as coyotes, literally living in encampments with measles and chickenpox. No child, no mother, no father woke up and said, "Give me this life." And so sometimes we must not allow our privilege and our accessibility to modern things and comforts cause us to forget that it could have been different. It could have literally been different. It could have been us on the other side of a border, our parents grabbing us and bringing us through dangerous seen and unseen to get a better opportunity in life. And so I hope that my colleagues, and I hope that we continue to take moments like this as a call to moral action. And moral action is essentially this: what can we do to make life better for everybody? It's a moral obligation because somebody did it for us. People died for us to have the quality of life that we have in this country. And so let us not forget that lives were shed, that hearts were broken, and that people put everything on the line for a better opportunity for us. And so let's not be selfish. Let's not get so stuck in our privilege that we don't do the same and pay it forward for the next generation. So again, same energy come budget season, same fervor come budget season to make sure that the budget reflects an investment in those who have been forgotten about, which is Black and brown people in this city. And so I'm looking forward to that fight as well, to make sure that our voices and our hearts are matched with the budget that shows that Chicago cares, as we continue to critique and we continue to challenge and we continue to vote in our partners at every level of government. Let's never forget, this is not a Chicagoan thing. This is starting from the top, and we are dealing with it from the bottom up. So let's continue to voice at a federal level, because those elections are soon coming. our congresspersons. Let's fight at a state level, our state senators, our state representatives, and our governor. And let's even look at our county officials, because everybody matters in this solution. And so we have to go to every leg of government and hold every leg of government accountable, and not just blame shift on one person that's in a city of 50 different wards, 77, soon to be 78 neighborhoods. Let's work together to fight the good fight. And I think we can get it done, Santita. I really do.
Amen to that. Amen. I mean, and Dwight, of course, Dwight McKee, Dr. D came up with a brilliant insight about the Underground Railroad. Would you make that case for us? That, you know, thanks be to God, people were generous to us, because we were not, you know, we had to have the Constitution amended to make black people citizens. Ultimately. Come on. And Attorney Fancher and Xavier Nagaris. I mean, because after the World War for us, after the Civil War was fought, we were still not citizens.
That's right.
Dwight?
And it was a generosity of the abolitionists who put their very lives on the line.
What do you mean by
to
that?
hide us.
What do you mean?
Well, the Underground Railroad it was houses. It was where people lived. It was the property, and they built in their houses or in their barns little small holes and attics that black people, when we went through, could hide in and go from house to house until we got to Canada or Ohio or wherever it was. We could, those who housed us were at risk, put their lives at risk. And in not only did they house us, they fed us. And they protected us. And it was God's grace that created a system that took us from A to Z. And we glorify that. We glorify Harriet Tubman. We glorify those people who did that. But, again, the inconsistency is that now we can be of service to somebody who has the same need. As Will said a minute ago, we've gotten arrogant and self-righteous.
You think that's what it is?
You know, we have been there before. I think that's part of it. But I also think that, you know, Pogo said, the reason people get coming out of Cuba is because of the embargo that America has on Cuba, wrecks the economy. The reason that Chile is in chaos is because when Allende was trying to set up a real economic system there and private and socialized the economy, the CIA went down and overthrew him. The Sandinistas had the same issue down in Nicaragua. Whenever these people try to create a real lifestyle, a level playing field for themselves, the United States jumps in, intervenes, turns it into a banana republic because they then can exploit the labor and the fruit of the labor themselves. And so it's created a chaotic situation in South America. When people walk across 2,000 miles across land and cold and heat and wild animals, trying to get free, trying to get to a better opportunity, you know, wherever they are, it must be a disaster. You got a 4-year-old child and you're walking around across half a continent trying to get free. We have to be empathetic and see ourselves in these people and see who we were in their reality and understand it really has been the same enemy. They're not the enemy. The enemy is the one that created the circumstance. And so I think we need more information so we can understand what we're looking at.
Thank you, because they're not the enemy. And people get upset with me when I say that. I'm like, wait a minute, the same corporate masters who brought us over here, brought black people over here. That's what's happening with them. Biden let it out. He said the quiet part out loud, Xavier and Mark and Dwight and Alderman. He said, we got to get we need our farm workers. The folks y'all don't want to pay. And now we're pushing these big farms. We're pushing big farms into prominence. Because we have big pharma, we have big farms. The family farm is dying because they're not dying, they're being killed by big farms. By Bill Gates, who's now the biggest landowner in the United States. Why? What? You don't own enough? I mean, are you serious? They are being brought so that we don't have to pay them anything. They're not being dropped all over the country. They're being dropped strategically. You farm out in California. You farm in the Midwest. You farm in the Northeast. That is what you do. You leave New York City, like Chicago, like LA, they are anomalies in their states. Much of California is farmland. Much of the world is farmland. I mean, God gives us, is so generous. God just can't run out of places, bounty, so we can draw from his bounty and eat. They're being dropped in places. They have been pushed in the front of the line in front of 12 million people while waiting patiently to get their papers so they can become immigrants, so they can get asylum here. No, they've been put at the front of the line so they can go to work for nothing and be mistreated here. That's what this is about. And we can't remember, Dwight, thank you for that. And we can't remember the fear, the terror of our ancestors trying to escape slavery? Are you serious? No, you can't do that. That's not right. And God will put us on the back of that bus and back in those fields. Because if you don't, there's no social promotion in the spirit world. If you don't learn the lesson, God will make you repeat it until you learn it. You might play out here in the world, but you ain't going to play with God. If you don't get the spiritual lessons learned, you're going to have to learn them over. You're going to get the lesson over and over and over and over again until you get it. I hope we get it. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to say? Aside from, I'm hoping we have this conversation at our convention, Dwight, because I think this is important. You know, with this composition of people, and we have to remember the AAPI community and the indigenous community. There are a lot of people who are yearning to be and breathe free here in the United States, and they deserve it. Black people are not the only aggrieved people in the United States. First people who are aggrieved are the indigenous people. We're on their land. Mark Fancher reminds us of that all the time. This is their stolen land. We need to ask them permission first to stay. Mississippi, Illinois. These are Indian names. Who does this? These folks stole everything from them and then kept the names. That's rich. Now, that's a neat trick, Dwight. That's rich. But does anyone else have anything that they'd like to say before we go?
You know, as a pastor, whenever I go to a church and the preacher has preached, to grab the mic to give comments is disrespectful. You have set us to new grounds. Thank you, Santita, for real. That's how you conclude. Yeah, amen.
And look, amen. I know that God makes you repeat the lesson until you learn it. You might be able to get by in school here on earth, but you ain't gonna get away with God. Ain't gonna let it happen. So here we go. Let's figure it out. But we're so proud of you, Alderman Will Hall, and we wish you we thank God that your people are represented by you. And beyond wishing you success, I just pray that God continues to give you the heart to serve, and that you will continue to be available to God to be of use. I'm so glad.
Amen. I receive that.
Yes, receive that. Receive that. It is given with love. And if there's anything I can do, all you have to do is call. Please don't don't text. You can text, but all y'all young people, would you just make a phone call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Wow, all these texts. I sent you a text. I'm like, you know what? Call me. So, but what you say? You said our land, Robert. Our lands were stolen by the Romans. The Europeans have had a good time. You know, they've had a good time. This has been their particular turn of history. But the fact is, no one has quite gotten it right. Okay, so you know, everybody, your self-righteousness, you can just throw that on out the window. Ain't nobody perfect. We're all unclean. So now we can go on and get clean together. How about that piece? Why don't we all learn these lessons together? Every time you see a migrant, you need to think about the Underground Railroad. Thank you, Dwight, for that. Think about that. People did risk their lives. You were called the N-word lover and worse. White people have faced all kinds of social exclusion, and they have been killed trying to save black folks. Ask Goodman Schwerner. Okay? They buried them and made them pay. They were just coming from New York trying to help folks to get registered to vote. Oh, no, they got killed. Okay? Mickey Schwerner and Andy Goodman and James Chaney. So just, think about that, everybody. Think about it. Think about it. So, oh yeah, Laura, you said I'm really right. And my mother made that observation. She said most of the states in this country are Indian names. Absolutely, they're indigenous, of course. We stole the land and kept the names. Who does that? That is so rich. Oh my gosh. Talk about hubris, excessive pride and arrogance. You steal somebody's stuff and then you keep the name. And you might, and I'm going to make a treaty with you, but I'm never, ever going to fulfill it. And you think God is going to bless you for that? Please. I'm telling you, you need to see Fareed Zakaria's, his commentary at the beginning of his show from this past Sunday. He talked about something that I've told you all so many times before. The colonized nations are rising up as the former colonizers are catching hell. Europe and the West are trying to reorganize their money. They're trying to stay in the mix financially. In the meantime, the people who they colonized are coming up with new currencies, and they're coming together and they're saying we don't want the dollar. We're tired of your arrogance. Even Putin said, you know what? Then we're about to break up this neocolonialism. That's what he said. So you want to figure out why the Indians, East Indians, and Africans and people of color are talking to him? It's because he talks that language and they can cut business deals with him. And we're playing games. These folks know that we got embarrassed into getting our voting rights because they put the picture of black children being eaten by dogs on the cover of Pravda, which was the state paper of the USSR at the time. Because our enemy got in, because they embarrassed us. They said, oh, this is America. And you saw the hoses being turned on black kids and the dog. People, get over yourselves. Ain't nobody perfect. But you know what? We can be perfected in God. That is the good news. So let's get well together. How about that? These are God's people, and they're coming back home anyway, as God would have it. They are Spanish-speaking indigenous people. How about that? I love you, everybody. I love you. And so let's get with it. Love you, Will. So proud of you. Love you, Mark Fancher. Love you, Xavier. Xavier, you got to keep on preaching. But I feel the Holy Spirit moving out of you. You just want to tell the truth. You're like, y'all, wait a minute. Y'all missing the point. Every time you come on, you're like, y'all missing the point. I love it. Seriously, you need to do that. I'm not kidding. I'm very serious. You can't get away from it. You cannot get away from it. It's coming. It's pouring all out of you, Xavier. It is.
That's what my mom said.
It is. It is. I see it and I feel it. So come on home and give a good word, Xavier. Come on. Just pray over that. Pray over that. Be available.
I will.
Pray over that. Pray over that. Because I don't think you would have been fooling with us if we were not trying to do it God's way. That's why you came this way in the first place. Just a bunch of secular people wouldn't have worked for you. You knew you'd be protected here, and you were.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, and I love you. since I have to make him my baby. That's right. Since he couldn't vote when he was trying to vote, when he was trying to get other people to vote, Dwight, poor child couldn't even vote himself and was running to be a delegate. He said, I'll be able to vote by July. So, bless his heart. Yeah. So, everybody, I love you. And got a lot of errands to run today, so I'm going to get on out of here. But you know what, tomorrow we're going to be talking about home ownership. Even in these uncertain times, you will be able to, you can own a home. You can refinance your home. We need to talk with David Hochberg about that tomorrow because I want us to be financially secure. But, I hope you all tell people today, and yes, I am very tired, but I'm going to be all right, you guys. The show is a blessing, but it does take a lot of work. And I do get up very early. Even if I go to bed late, I get up very early at 2 because I want to get things right for you. I do. And then as you hear me, I'm still running things off as we're coming on the air. But that's life. And, because I don't have a staff, I'm it. And typically on shows like this, you do have a staff. But that's not a complaint. It's just how it is. And I'm glad that God has given me the opportunity because now I know as I begin to get a staff, I can point them in the direction of where to get information. There's nothing that I can hire anyone to do that I've not done myself. And make sure that before you hire anyone, that you know how to do it yourself. Don't hire a housekeeper unless you've cleaned your house from top to bottom. Don't do that. Don't ask someone to do for you what you are unwilling to do for yourself. And maybe then, if you hire someone, you will treat them with respect because you've been there. How about that? I love everybody. So that's right, Paula. You said, errands, you need sleep. Yes, I do. Child, I do. But I've got some things I need to do today, so there's that. But I love you all so much. And I hope you've gotten something out of the show today, and I hope that everybody on the panel has too. I'm going to go back. I'm going to get me some books on the Underground Railroad, Dwight. Thank you for that.
All righty.
No, because that's a heck of a analogy. So thank you for that. Love you, babe. Love you all. Love you, love you, love you.
All right.
Love you all. Thank you, Henry.